Fox News alert a liberal media meltdown over the possibility that Elon Musk might bring free speech to Twitter. Imagine that. This is the Faulkner Focus. Happy Friday, everyone. I'm Julie Banderas in for Harris today. So Tesla's CEO is saying that he is willing to pay $43 billion to buy out Twitter and make it a private company. But the social media giant is reportedly considering a so-called poison pill strategy to stop Musk from taking over. Musk has even teased a plan B if his offer is rejected, though he's not really quite going into details. There's a headline in the Wall Street Journal, and it points out this, that Elon Musk contends censorship, not abuse, is Twitter's problem, adding he doesn't care about making money from the business, but cares about freedom. Musk doubled down on those points yesterday.
I think it's very important for there to be an inclusive arena for free speech, where all,
Imagine that, free speech. Some in the media, though, are in total freak-out mode over this, and some point out the tech industry was never meant to be a place for censorship.
It's kind of funny. Elon Musk wants to buy it, but there are massive life and globe altering consequences for just letting people run wild on the thing.
Silicon Valley advertised itself as a free-spirited counterculture that turned into a monopoly, and not just a monopoly, but a political monopoly.
Mark Thiessen, Fox News contributor, former White House speechwriter, and Washington Post columnist, joins us. It is a laughing matter, actually, at this point. I mean, it's actually hysterical. Historian Victor Davis Hanson points out that Silicon Valley was originally
to accept his offer if that's what's in the best interest. They can't just simply say we don't want Elon Musk to own the company. So if they try to, he's saying that he's got a plan B, that if they turn down his offer, what he can do is he can go around them and make the offer directly to his shareholders, and the shareholders can sell their stock directly to him, and he can get a controlling interest.
Yeah.
You know, this is going to be very hard for them to turn this down, especially since Twitter has lost $1.3 billion in the last 2 years, and he's offering $15 premium on top of what the trading price was when he bought his stock. So it's going to be very hard for them from a financial perspective to stop him. You
know you're rich when you're offering $43 billion to buy a company, but I don't care about making money from that business. I'm just going to throw in 43 Bs. But, you know, he wants to, you know, express freedom of speech for those who do not have that freedom. And obviously he's talking about conservatives who are essentially muted on Twitter, on Facebook. You know, there is a double standard. There's a lot of hypocrisy when it comes to liberals wanting to have free speech as long as it agrees with their theories, if you will. And what do you make of the liberal media freaking out? Because obviously they believe in free speech, right? As long as it doesn't include conservatives.
No, that's exactly right. So look, I mean, you obviously don't want Twitter to be a complete open forum, because then we'd have jihadist beheading videos on, and pornography and everything else that goes on. No one wants Twitter to become a sewer. But what the problem has been is the liberal bias in Twitter, that they have been silencing conservative speech. Like they suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop story and other news like that. They suppressed the Wuhan lab leak theory, which turned out to be true. So they've gotten they've gotten it wrong. And the problem is, for a lot of liberals think that conservative speech is just as offensive as jihadist beheading videos and pornography. They like the liberal bias in Twitter, and they don't want him to end it. And the other thing that a lot of conservatives have suspected is that there's the algorithms of Twitter have a liberal bias. And one of the things he's proposed is transparency. He's going to open source the algorithm so that any developer, anybody can look at the code and see how it functions. And they don't want that to happen, because that will expose the fact that they've programmed the system to suppress conservative speech, and he will end that and expose it and allow people to see the algorithm.
For sure. You write, by the way, in a new op-ed that President Biden's attempts to shift blame for sky-high inflation are failing. And I'm going to quote you: Americans believe Biden's policies are a disaster, and his efforts to convince them otherwise are backfiring. The only thing people hate more than a failed president is a failed president who lies to them. Now, the White House is appearing to point a finger now, this is the latest blame game, right, to Texas Governor Greg Abbott for causing delays and raising prices by ordering enhanced inspection of all trucks coming in from Mexico. Seems rational, right? Well, here's Press Secretary Jen Psaki defending those comments. Watch.
So is the White House blaming Greg Abbott for inflation? Well, I think we're trying to state the facts of what another political stunt that we're seeing happen and the impact of it.
So does the president then acknowledge any responsibility for the inflation that we're seeing now based on the decisions that he's made when he came into office?
Well, I would say, as the president has talked about quite a bit, there are a range of factors, including the pandemic, the impact on the supply chains.
Okay, so let me get this straight. The White House is now including Texas Governor Abbott's truck inspections in its lists of culprits. Those culprits include Putin, COVID, oil companies, Abbott. When is Biden finally going to take responsibility for inflation's 40-year high?
Yeah, Putin and Abbott, very similar. Very similar, yeah. Look, American people aren't stupid. They know that before Putin started massing his forces on Ukraine's border, that we had the highest rise in gas prices year over year in over 3 decades. They know that before Putin started massing his forces on Ukraine's border, we had the highest inflation in 4 decades. So they understand, of course, that the war and what Putin's doing has contributed to inflation and rising gas prices, but they were already high beforehand. It would be one thing when Biden took office, gas was about $2.40 a gallon. If all of a sudden it went up to $3.50 because of the war, or $3, right, then people would say, okay, that's a price I'm willing to pay to support the Ukrainian people. Because in fact, even despite the gas prices now, polls show that Americans want to put more sanctions on Putin. So they're willing to make a sacrifice to stand with the Ukrainian people, and how courageous they've been. But the problem is that the floor was so high beforehand because of Biden's policies, because of the $1.9 trillion social spending bill disguised as COVID relief, which unleashed great demand that supply couldn't keep up with. That's why we have inflation now, and that's not Putin's fault. Putin and Abbott didn't pass $1.9 trillion in COVID relief.
So we've got record inflation. Our housing market is taking a hit. Mortgage rates have hit a 10-year high. Obviously, that's going to have a huge impact on new home sales. Now 5%, a number not seen since 2011, by the way. And in fact, rates saw the fastest 3-month increase since 1987. Who's Biden going to blame for that?
You know, the problem with when presidents say things that are contrary to the lived reality of the American people, they tune them out. So we think about the things that Biden is saying. He's saying that that inflation was Putin's fault. People know it's not Putin's fault. He's saying, well, we have the best unemployment in 50 years. Well, that's because of the inflation and the money that he poured into the economy with that COVID relief has created the worst labor crisis in American history. We have 11.3 million unfilled jobs, so businesses can't meet demand. He keeps bragging about all these different things that are contrary to the lived reality of the American people. And so the first step in addressing this, and his approval rating now in Quinnipiac poll, 33%. You know what George Bush's approval rating was when he left office in the midst of the worst financial crisis in American history?
Not 33%.
34. Yeah. Donald Trump after January 6th, 34. So he's plumbing the depths of presidential approval, and it's because of his own policies, and it won't change until he acknowledges his responsibility.
All right, Mark Thiessen, thank you. Always great to see you. Have a wonderful weekend and happy
Thank
Easter.
you. Take care.
All right. In what would be a major victory for the Ukrainian military, it claims it sank a key Russian flagship after a missile strike did significant damage. This is the same ship, by the way, whose crew famously demanded some Ukrainian soldiers surrender at the start of the war. Remember that? And then they got told to go F themselves. My 9-year-old daughter's in the studio, FYI. General Jack Keane weighs in next.
It's a huge victory for Ukraine. I mean, military, it's not decisive. This ship did fire cruise missiles into Ukraine, nothing in comparison to the air-launched cruise missiles and to the land-based cruise missiles, but nonetheless a significant symbol to the Ukrainians, and it's got to be a huge morale boost for Ukrainian forces and likely to the Ukrainian people themselves.
Meantime, Moscow says it will ramp up attacks on the capital, Kyiv, after accusing Ukraine of striking residential buildings in Russian territory. Trey Yingst is reporting live from Kyiv and joins me now. Hi, Trey.
Julie, hi there. Overnight, long-range missiles targeted the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv. Russia's defense ministry confirmed the attack, saying that their forces hit a machine-building plant that was being used to produce anti-air and anti-ship systems. As Russian forces do increase attacks in the eastern part of Ukraine, Russia says it will continue to target Kyiv.
The number and scale of missile strikes against targets in Kiev will increase in response to any terrorist attack or sabotage committed by the Kiev nationalist regime on the Russian territory.
The strikes come after Russia's flagship vessel of the Black Sea Fleet, the Moscow, sank. Russia claims a fire on board caused the cruiser to sink, but the Ukrainians say they hit the ship with 2 Neptune missiles. These developments are taking place as the Ukrainian people continue to find atrocities left behind in the wake of the Russian occupation around Kyiv. We were in the suburbs of this capital city again today, where war crimes prosecutors are still digging up bodies from mass graves. We also got a better look at the extensive destruction left behind. Now, as this city continues to brace for the possibility that Russia could invade once again by the ground, we still hear those air raid sirens each and every day, and the people here say they are still frightened by what Russia is doing to their country, but they're prepared to stay and fight. Julie.
Trey Yingst, thank you. President Biden's approval ratings keep going from bad to worse. And now there's a new poll showing him losing support among key groups that actually helped him put him in the White House. A top Dem now warning of a midterm tornado. Plus this.
I think even Democrats are calling this a frightening proposal to roll back the tidy. They make policy decision after policy decision without any forethought or long-term strategic plan, and it's disastrous for our country.
As Texas Governor Abbott sends another bus of migrants to Washington, 21 states are now suing the Biden administration for ending Trump-era border restrictions. Arizona's Attorney General and the Cochise County Sheriff joins us live from the border next month. The mayor of McAllen, Texas, warns no amount of preparation will limit a disaster when that pandemic-era order ends. Republican James Comer also sounding the alarm.
When Title 42 goes away, it's only going to get even worse than it is now, and everyone knows it. This is terrible policy. I don't think Joe Biden or Vice President Harris has any idea how bad it is. Because of Joe Biden's policies on the border over the last year, every state is now a border state. Every state is being flooded with illegals, which is bringing along with it fentanyl, human trafficking, and increased crime.
More Democrats are also joining the fight against ending Title 42, including Arizona Senator Kyrsten Sinema. She says the administration's extension of the public transit mask mandate proves the need to delay lifting Title 42. And now 21 states are suing to stop the Title 42 rollback, calling it a self-inflicted calamity. That includes, of course, the state of Arizona. Let's bring in Cochise County Sheriff Mark Daniels and the state's Attorney General Mark Brnovich. Thank you both for joining us from the border in Arizona. Mark, I'm going to start with you first. U.S. Customs and Border Protection predicts that agents are going to see an influx of 18,000 illegal immigrants a day after this is lifted, Title 42. A growing number of Democrats, as I just mentioned, Kyrsten Sinema being one of them, highlighting the hypocrisy of extending this, mask mandate while lifting Title 42, okay? So it's not okay for an American to board a plane without a mask, but if you're an illegal with COVID, come on into the country, mask optional. What say you?
Well, I think this is why so many folks are not only frustrated because of the hypocrisy of the Biden administration, where they're imposing all these things on hardworking American taxpayers, and yet there seems to be a double standard for people that are breaking the law coming into the country illegally. And let us not forget, I'm very proud to lead that 21-state coalition suing over Title 42, but that's just one little piece of the puzzle. What the Biden administration has done is they have decriminalized and incentivized people coming here illegally, and that's why we are seeing these record amounts. And literally, it's going to be like the entire population of Baltimore, Maryland coming over in 1 month, and the record amount of drugs and people coming in here is just overwhelming the system, and we're all paying the price for the failed policies of the Democrats and the Biden administration.
Sheriff, there's an op-ed in the Washington Examiner. It talks about how Governor Greg Abbott just, is doing the job that Biden won't do. It would be nice if we had a president that was this committed to working with Mexico, it reads, to end the migrant crisis at our southern border, but we don't. So Abbott is playing the hand he was dealt. It's a risky play, but he is trying to make the best of it. Everyone who cares about the security of our southern border should be hoping he pulls it off. What would you say about the message that every single state should consider itself a border state? Because once these illegals come into the country, I don't care from what border, they're going to end up in your state. That is a bottom line.
Julie, let me say this. The frustration by sheriffs, by mayors, by attorney generals, by governors, because of the intellectual avoidance by this president, Secretary Mayorkas, to do anything on our southern border. They have not prioritized it for the last 15, 16 months. As a result, we're in the position we're in. As a result, also, we're addressing public safety issues, national security, health issues, to include humanitarian issues. This lies directly on the shoulders of this president.
Yeah, it's not only a border crisis, and I'm glad that you brought up humanitarian issues. It's a humanitarian crisis.
Humane, it's insane.
Yeah.
Oh, it is. Standing right behind this wall here, several days ago, we had a 32-year-old female that came over the wall, ended up getting stuck on the wall and died on the wall. That's humanitarian.
Wow.
The frustration on our border by sheriffs is incredible down here. And thanks to our Attorney General, thanks to our governor, thanks to Governor Abbott, and the many other sheriffs and mayors out there trying to do something that this president's not doing. It's a shame.
I mean, the fact that you guys are standing at the border, but our own president and vice president hasn't visited the border. Are you guys holding your breath on that?
Yeah, it's so frustrating to me. I mean, Kamala Harris was a state AG at one time. She should understand the impact this failed policy is having where, our kids are dying. People are dying in America as a result of the amount of fentanyl and methamphetamine coming into our country. And quite frankly, if Mayorkas isn't going to do his job, he needs to be impeached. So whether it's the Democrats or Republicans, the people in Congress need to start taking this issue seriously because people in America are dying as a result of these failed policies.
Former President Trump, obviously, you heard, called for Mayorkas to either step down or get impeached. So he agrees with you there. You just mentioned fentanyl. The overdose deaths soared in 2021, especially in teenagers. In fact, the number of teens who died from fentanyl overdose has more than doubled since 2019. And there's a UCLA study that found that 253 teenagers actually died from fentanyl overdose in 2019, which accounts for 51% of all overdose deaths. Last year, fatalities surged to 884, with fentanyl causing 77% of all overdose deaths in teens. I mean, what is the Biden administration going to say to those families and those parents of those teenagers whose children are dead because we are ignoring what is the biggest crisis in this country and spending so much time worrying about other countries and not about our own? The vice president was at the border last June. The president has yet to visit. When Jen Psaki was asked if the president would visit, there was no answer. So it seems like there's no solution either.
Julie, I'll say the same thing that President Biden, Vice President Harris, and Secretary Mayorkas. They will say nothing to these families that have lost their loved ones as a result of this border that's not secure right now. Same thing they've done to sheriffs, mayors, governors, and attorney generals. This president needs to engage because at the beginning of the day, it starts in communities. At the end of the day, it ends in communities. They serve the same people I do. It's a crying shame what's going on in this country.
Yeah, this shouldn't be an issue of left versus right. This is a fundamental issue of right versus wrong. The Biden administration is doing the wrong thing. Let's do the right thing to save America.
It should not be about left versus right. This is not a political issue. This is a national crisis. Cochise County Sheriff Mark Daniels, thank you very much. And the state's Attorney General, Mark Brnovich, thank you so much for taking the time and talking to us today about this really important issue. Thank you, and have a great weekend.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
President Biden's latest odd behavior raising some eyebrows and also raising larger questions about older elected officials and their ability to serve. Plus this.
To really get down to only a third being favorable and in the 20s on independents, of course, makes re-election a virtual impossibility.
Polls show the president bleeding support from a cohort that went hard for him in the past. Is it time for Democrats to panic? Pete Hegseth in Focus next. President Biden's poll numbers are going the way of the Titanic, if you will, amid the multiple crises he is facing. But what may be surprising is where he is losing support exactly. There's a new Gallup poll which shows, apparently, that The numbers are sinking for millennials in particular, basically saying that young people are expected to be the great future hope of the Democratic Party, with their liberal views influencing their vote for decades to come. Democrats need turnout from Biden voters in the midterms to preserve their slight majorities in Congress. This poll suggests that the age groups that gave Biden his widest margins have actually grown the most skeptical of his tenure. This will be disconcerting to Democrats over the short term, too. And if that's not bad enough, there is another new poll which shows only a dismal 26% of independents approve of the job Biden is doing, and overall another 33% approve. Former Clinton pollster Mark Penn sounding the alarm.
Only a third being favorable, and in the 20s on independents, of course, makes re-election a virtual impossibility. This is going to be a tornado of a midterms if these numbers continue to hold up. And frankly, they've had month after month here to do something to turn around on inflation, on immigration, on Ukraine, on crime, and they just haven't done it. They need big changes to change some big numbers.
Pete Hegseth is co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend and joins me now. Pete, great to see you. I just saw you on Brian Kilmeade's radio show, now here in the morning. Are you tired yet? Oh, my God, you guys work a lot.
No, it's all good.
Never. All right.
Of course not.
What do you think is to blame, you think, for millennials and Generation Z respondents to drop nearly 20 points since the beginning of Biden's presidency?
Yeah, that was supposed to be his base, Julie. You're exactly right. I mean, there's got to be some cynicism there that all the utopian promises that were made, take number one, crushing the virus. I mean, there was this false construct that Donald Trump was to blame for what happened, and the vaccines, which he actually developed, would solve the problem. And in actuality, it has become a pandemic and an endemic, as we knew from the beginning we were going to have to live with. And a lot of people's lives have been altered as a result, and it certainly hasn't been crushed because it never was going to be crushed. Add on top of that the false promise that all of your student loans will be paid for. I think some of those folks thought that would happen with a flip of a switch. So it's not just a problem of inability to execute. It's also big promises that were never going to be delivered upon effectively. And so you've got this age group saying they don't support grandpa anymore. I mean, there's also a disconnect between the energy that they're used to from their leaders and the reality of what they're seeing from Joe Biden. Now they're pumping their cars full of $5 gas and paying more for everything. And suddenly politics hits them at home, and paychecks and taxes and all the things that come with it. So this was a vulnerable group to begin with. Yes, they are pumped full of indoctrination. You're exactly right. But there's always an opportunity to be mugged by reality.
Right.
And now it will be on Republicans to present a proactive agenda that meets them where they're at as well.
I'm glad that you brought up school loans, because you may remember recently Jen Psaki was asked about that, right? Because these young people thought that their school loans were paid for. And then Jen Psaki was asked, well, are we expected to pay that back sometime within Biden's presidency? You would think the answer was no. At least that's what all these young people thought when they voted for him. But the answer is probably yes. So, that whole loan promise, that's also another promise denied.
Absolutely right. And you take that number of the millennials, add it up with 26% approval amongst Hispanics. 26%, that's supposed to be, the future demographic they leverage, and especially if the strategy they're using on the border is one they intend to continue. Alongside 26% of independents, no politician would want to run on the Larry Bird number approval rating of 33.
Right.
It's not something you can build a coalition on.
Right.
You don't raise any boats with that.
It's not just Hispanics, too. And by the way, Hispanics are disgusted because of the border control crisis.
Correct.
Because Hispanics who are here legally are like, what? I came in, I waited in line, and I did it the right way, but now you're letting all these other people come in and pollute our country. Also, African Americans. I mean, I think that the poll numbers there are about 60%, which sounds high, but it's not, because it really should be 80%. So, there are a lot of promises that are not being kept, that are affecting the demographic in which you rely on to become president when you're a Democrat. This also is interesting because it comes after a Quinnipiac University poll. And this one found that Biden's also lost a lot of group in another key group, and that's independents. Now, remember when he was running as a moderate, right? What happened to that group?
Exactly right. Well, he abandoned that from the very beginning. He got in bed with the far left, has been willing to cater to them at every turn, to your AOC wing, as opposed to the so-called moderate Joe from the beginning. So he made that decision, and they hoped they could ram things through. They ran into Joe Manchin and others on the legislative front. And then you know what else they ran into? The wokeness of the far left as well. Take independents, take Hispanics, take black voters, all of this gender ideology, trans, your kid could be boy or girl at the age of 5, critical race theory stuff. It cuts against the grain of common sense amongst groups who may not count themselves as ideological conservatives or Republicans. They don't. If you're an independent, it's because you pride yourself on being a free thinker who can go in either direction. We underweight the extent to which the cultural aspects of common sense are weighing down Biden and Democrats as well, and rightfully so.
Another day, another bizarre moment from President Biden. Actually, a couple of them. Here he is in North Carolina yesterday.
And if my dad were watching now, he passed away, but he's watching, he'd be mad at me and say, "Excuse my back. I didn't apologize for having my back to you. I apologize. But excuse my back, but I'm looking at you." There's not a single thing America can't do when we do it together as the United States of America. God bless you all.
The latest cringeworthy episode, once again prompting questions about whether his age is affecting his ability to do his job. A new op-ed arguing Dianne Feinstein is Joe Biden shows why we need age limits for politicians. Quote, "This is not a new problem." Strom Thurmond retired at 100 years of age. By the end of his second term, Ronald Reagan was falling asleep in cabinet meetings. 10 senators are 78 or older. California's Dianne Feinstein and Iowa's Chuck Grassley, the oldest, at 88. When we watch those speeches from the president, I mean, it does, I mean, no matter whether you voted for him or not, they are concerning.
It used to be funny. It's not anymore. It's scary. It's embarrassing. And it's extremely concerning. It's one thing to be a senator. We know about the senator. There should be term limits, no doubt, in the House and the Senate. And they've never been willing to do that. It should be done by constitutional amendment through Article 5. That's a long ways off. The presidency is a whole other story. And it should be the people that surround the president, advisors and others who say, this may not be your time and it may not be your turn. That didn't happen with Joe Biden because they were happy to use him as their vessel to take on the Bernie Sanders wing of the party, thought they could prop him up. They didn't have to run him. He was in the basement. I believe behind closed doors there already has to be a reckoning inside the administration that a second term is an impossibility. But then they look to the number 2 and they say Kamala Harris and say that's an impossibility. In 23 and 24, I think we're looking at a internal civil war for leadership inside that party that's completely devoid of leadership. This is not a man capable of being president of the United States right now. If it was Donald Trump, people would be screaming 25th Amendment, 25th Amendment. That happened all the time under Donald Trump. Even he right now has said the only thing that would hold him back from running is his personal health, which is a responsible statement to make. No one's ever made that statement inside the Democrat Party about Joe Biden, and there's no denying that's a factor right now, and it's unfortunate.
I mean, I remember after President Trump had COVID, all the media outlets were just obsessed on whether he was fit enough because he was out of breath by walking up the White House stairs. Do you remember that? I mean, he just had COVID. And they were worried about that. Or him possibly tripping going up, onto Air Force One.
Down the
Those
ramp.
are really minor.
I mean, the ramp for a week.
Yeah, I mean, that was just so minor compared to this, but yet I don't hear this conversation being had on other networks, unfortunately. Mark
It's not had. Nope.
Thank you. It's so great to see you. Have a wonderful weekend and Easter.
Good to see you.
See you soon. New York City Mayor Eric Adams taking a stand on transit crime, but Democrats and the liberal media still calling for less police presence after the mass subway shooting here in Brooklyn. Plus, new examples of schools pushing liberal woke agendas and parents continuing to fight back.
This is about our voices being heard. This started as a parents' movement and has become a citizens and taxpayers movement. People are fed up and they want to see change.